There is a specific kind of silence that exists inside a luxury car when the person driving it is calculating exactly how much your life is worth to them. It smells of conditioned leather, expensive cologne, and the metallic tang of fear that seems to seep from my own pores. I sat in the passenger seat of the BMW X5, my hands folded in my lap to hide the tremor that had become my constant companion. It was my car. I bought it 3 years ago, thinking it would be the vehicle I used to drive my wife to the coast on weekends. Now, I wasn't even allowed to hold the keys. I am William. I am 81 years old. I spent 40 years of my life as a structural engineer. I calculated load-bearing capacities for skyscrapers in Chicago and bridges in Seattle. I understood stress. I understood the precise amount of pressure a beam could take before it buckled and brought the whole house down. But sitting there, watching the sprawling suburbs blur past the tinted windows, I realized I had miscalculated the structural integrity of my own family. Driving the car was Tyler, my grandson. He was 24, handsome in a sharp, predatory way, wearing a Tag Heuer watch I had paid for and a suit that cost more than my first car. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, an aggressive, erratic rhythm that matched the bass of the music thumping through the speakers, music he knew rattled my hearing aids and made my head swim. We were going to the First National Bank. Again. "Stop fidgeting, Gramps," Tyler said, not looking at me. His eyes were fixed on the road, or perhaps on the future he was trying to buy with my savings. "You look guilty." "I'm not guilty," I whispered. My voice sounded thin, like paper tearing. "I'm just tired, Tyler. Can't we do this tomorrow?" "We do it today," he snapped, cutting me off. The mask slipped for a second, revealing the desperation underneath. "The investment window closes at noon. I told you this. You want me to lose the opportunity?" Investment. That was the word he used. I knew where the money was really going. I had seen the text messages pop up on his phone when he left it on the kitchen counter. I saw the names. Vinny, the Borgata, final notice. He wasn't an entrepreneur. He was a gambler who was in too deep, and I was his line of credit. It started after my hip surgery, when the doctor said I shouldn't live alone during recovery. Tyler had volunteered. I was so proud. I thought he wanted to bond. I thought he loved me.
It started with groceries. Then it was bills. Now it was naked extortion. "If we don't get this cash," Tyler said, his voice dropping to that low, reasonable tone that terrified me more than his shouting, "I can't pay the property tax. And if we lose the house, well, you know where you go. The state facility. The one on 4th Street. He knew my fear. He weaponized it. He knew I would rather die than go to a state home. He pulled into the bank parking lot, swinging the heavy SUV into a handicap spot with the arrogance of a man who believes the world owes him convenience. He killed the engine. The silence rushed back in, heavy and suffocating. He turned to me. The sunlight hit his face, illuminating the sweat on his upper lip. He was scared too. The bookies were likely losing patience. "Okay, listen to me," he said, leaning over the console. He smelled of mints and stale anxiety. 50,000, large bills. If they ask, you're buying a vintage boat, a Chris Craft. You've always wanted one. 50,000, I repeated, the number feeling absurd in my mouth. "Tyler, that's the last of the liquid savings." "You won't," he hissed. He reached out and grabbed my arm. His fingers dug into the soft flesh of my bicep, finding the bruise he had left there 3 days ago when I refused to sign a check. He squeezed. Pain shot up my shoulder, hot and sharp. I gasped. "Don't stutter," he ordered, staring into my eyes. "Don't shake. And for God's sake, don't look at the teller like she's your savior. She's just a clerk. You walk in, you demand your money, we walk out. If you mess this up, I pack your bags tonight." "I understand," I whimpered. He released me. He patted my cheek, a gesture that felt like a slap. "Good." We got out of the car. The walk to the bank entrance felt like a march to the gallows. The sun was too bright. The air was too thin. Tyler gripped my elbow, guiding me. To anyone passing by, it looked like a supportive grandson helping his frail grandfather. It looked like love. They couldn't feel the pinch of his fingers. We entered the bank. The air conditioning hit me like a wall of ice. It smelled of floor wax, recycled air, and money. It was a smell I used to associate with success, with the dividends of a life of hard labor. Now, it smelled like a crime scene.
The lobby was quiet. A few people stood at the ATMs. We approached the teller station. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. Thump, 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 thump.
It was a frantic, irregular rhythm that felt like it might crack the sternum. I felt lightheaded. We reached the counter. The teller was Alina. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I had known Alina for 10 years. She had handled my accounts since she was a trainee. She knew about my wife's passing. She knew about my garden. She had a kind face, framed by dark curls that were starting to gray, and eyes that usually crinkled with a smile when she saw me. "Good morning, Mr. Vance," she said, looking up from her screen. Her professional smile was in place, but it faltered, just for a fraction of a second, when she saw Tyler looming over my shoulder like a dark shadow. "Good morning, Alina," I managed to say. My voice was raspy. I cleared my throat. "What is it?" she asked, her eyes scanning my face. She was looking for the spark, the joke I usually made about the weather. "We're in a bit of a rush," Tyler answered for me. His voice was smooth, charming, the voice he used on girls at bars. He slid my passbook and my driver's license across the cold marble counter. Alina looked at the passbook. She looked at Tyler. Then she looked back at me. "What is it?" she asked politely. "A boat," Tyler said. "A vintage Chris Craft. Beautiful thing. But the seller is old school." "I see," Alina said. She picked up the withdrawal slip Tyler had already filled out. She looked at the number. Her eyebrows rose slightly. $50,000, she read. She lowered her voice. "Mr. Vance, for an amount this large, we typically recommend a cashier's check. It's much safer than carrying currency." "He likes cash," Tyler interrupted, his voice sharpening just a degree. He moved closer, pressing his chest against my shoulder, a physical wall blocking me from retreat. He squeezed my arm again. He found the exact spot. The pain was blinding. "Yes," I whispered, staring down at the marble counter, unable to meet Elena's eyes. "Cash. I stared at the marble countertop, listening to the hum of the bill counter in the background, wishing I had the courage to scream. I felt Tyler's breath on my neck, a hot reminder of my own cowardice. I was ready to sign my life away just to avoid the nursing home. But if you've ever felt trapped by the very people who are supposed to protect you, if you've ever prayed for a miracle in a hopeless place, hit that subscribe button."
Because what I didn't see was Elena's hand moving beneath the counter, pressing a button that would turn this robbery into a rescue. Elena didn't move immediately. She held the slip in her hand. She looked at the signature on the paper, Tyler's forgery, practiced 100 times, and then she looked at me. "I just need to verify the funds and get approval from the manager for a vault withdrawal," she said. "Fine," Tyler sighed, checking his watch. Elena turned to her computer. She typed. I watched her fingers. They were moving fast, too fast for a simple balance check. She wasn't looking at the numbers. She was typing a message. She stood up and walked to the back, disappearing into the vault area. Tyler leaned down to my ear. "You're doing great," he whispered. "I'm thirsty," I said weakly. Elena returned. She was carrying a heavy canvas bag. She placed it on the counter. She opened it. Bundles of $100 bills. "I'll just need to count it out," she said. "Bank policy." "That's not necessary," Tyler said, reaching for the bag. "I insist," Elena said. Her voice had changed. It was steel-plated now. "For Mr.?" She began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. She was moving excruciatingly slow. She snapped each bill. She held them up to the light. Tyler was vibrating with impatience. His leg was bouncing. He looked around the lobby. The security guard was by the door, looking at his phone. "Lady," Tyler hissed. "I have to check the serials," Elena said, without looking up. She counted to 10,000, then 20. I looked at her, really looked at her. She stopped counting. She left her hand on the stack of bills. She looked up and locked eyes with me. In that split second, the air between us charged with electricity. She saw. She saw the way my sleeve had written up when Tyler grabbed me, exposing the purple-yellow bruise on my forearm. She saw the way I was leaning away from him, flinching every time he shifted his weight. She saw the terror in my eyes that I was trying so desperately to hide behind the mask of a confused old man. She wasn't counting money. She was buying time. She looked at Tyler. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some secondary ID from you as well." "I gave you his ID," Tyler snapped. "But you are the one facilitating the exchange," Elena said. "This is Tyler started to shout. He slammed his hand on the counter. Then the world shifted.
Thud. A heavy mechanical sound echoed through the lobby.
It came from the front entrance. Tyler spun around. The heavy magnetic locks on the glass double doors had engaged. The metal bolts had slammed into the floor and ceiling. Whirr. The automated security blinds on the large plate glass windows began to descend, cutting off the sunlight, plunging the bank into a dim, artificial twilight. The ambient music cut out. The silence was sudden and absolute. "Tyler!" shouted, his voice cracking. He backed away from the counter, pulling me with him. He looked at the door, locked. He looked at the security guard, who had dropped his phone and now had his hand on his holster, stepping forward. Tyler turned back to Elena. His face was twisted in shock and rage. "You screamed." Elena didn't flinch. She stood behind the bulletproof glass, her hands resting flat on the counter, palms open. "I can't do that," she said calmly. Tyler roared. "Because I pressed the silent alarm, sir," Elena said. Her voice didn't waver. "Because Mr. Vance is shaking. Because he has bruises on his arm." Tyler froze. He looked at me. For a moment, I thought he was going to kill me. I saw the calculation in his eyes. I saw the betrayal. I saw the realization that his golden goose had just become a witness. "You old fool," he snarled, his lips curling back from his teeth. "You signaled her." He raised his hand. It was a reflex. He was going to strike me right there in the lobby, in front of the cameras, in front of God and everyone. I flinched, squeezing my eyes shut, waiting for the blow. But it never came. Crash! The glass of the side entrance, the emergency exit, shattered inward. "Police!" The shout was guttural, loud, and terrifying. Tyler spun toward the noise. 3 officers in tactical vests poured through the shattered door, weapons drawn. "Drop the bag! Get on the ground!" Tyler looked at the cops. He looked at the money on the counter. He looked at me. And for the first time in 6 months, I wasn't the one who was afraid. The sound of a man begging for his life is pathetic, but the sound of a man lying to save his skin while pressed into the industrial carpet of a bank lobby is offensive to the ears. I sat on a folding metal chair that the branch manager had hurriedly brought out from the back office, a heavy orange shock blanket draped over my shoulders, like a cape I hadn't earned.
The air conditioning was still humming, a cold, indifferent drone beneath the chaotic symphony of police radios, shouting officers, and the jagged, hyperventilating breaths of my grandson. Tyler was face down on the floor, 10 feet away from me. His expensive Italian suit was covered in dust, the jacket bunched up around his shoulders, his cheek pressed against the rough fibers of the rug. A police officer with a knee in the center of Tyler's back was holding him down, while another secured his wrists with zip ties that made a sharp zzz sound, a sound of finality. "Tyler!" screamed, his voice muffled by the carpet, but still loud enough to grate on my nerves. "I'm his caregiver. He's my grandfather. He's sick." I watched him. I didn't tremble anymore. The adrenaline that had surged through me when the glass shattered had receded, leaving behind a cold, crystalline clarity. I felt light. I felt heavy. I felt everything and nothing all at once. A paramedic was kneeling beside me, inflating a cuff around my arm. "Pressure is a little high, sir," she said softly, her eyes kind. "Try to breathe slowly." I did as she asked. I inhaled the scent of ozone and floor wax. I exhaled the scent of fear. "Tyler!" yelled again, twisting his neck to look at the officers, to look at anyone who would listen to his narrative. "He has dementia. He gets confused. He begged me to bring him here. He thought he was buying a boat." The lies spilled out of him like sewage from a burst pipe. I listened to the fluency of his deception. He didn't stutter. He didn't hesitate. He had practiced this narrative. He had prepared for this eventuality. He had built a cage of words to trap me in, painting me as the incompetent invalid and himself as the martyr saint of grandsons. Detective Miller walked into my field of vision. He was a man who looked like he had seen too much of the world's ugliness to be surprised by anything. He wore a rumpled suit and a tie that was loosened at the collar. He held a small notebook in his hand. He looked at Tyler on the floor. Then he looked at me. He knelt down so he was at eye level with me. He didn't touch me. He just looked. "Mister," he asked. His voice was gravelly but gentle. "I'm Detective Miller." "My arm," I whispered. I lifted my left arm.
The sleeve of my cardigan had written up, exposing the bruise Tyler had put there 3 days ago, a purple and yellow bloom of violence on my pale skin. Miller looked at the bruise. His jaw tightened.
He made a note. Miller asked. Yes, I said. Tyler shrieked from the floor. He fell. He falls all the time. I helped him up. Miller ignored him. He stayed focused on me. Your grandson claims you authorized this withdrawal. He says you are mentally unfit to manage your finances and that this was a transaction you requested. The room seemed to tilt. This was the moment, the fulcrum upon which the rest of my life would balance. I could save him. I could nod. I could say, yes, I'm confused. Yes, I wanted a boat. Yes, I fell. If I did that, the police would unhand him. They would write it off as a domestic misunderstanding. They would let us go. And tonight, in the dark of my own home, behind closed doors where no one could hear me scream, Tyler would make me pay for this humiliation. He would tighten the screws. He would take the phone away. He would make good on his threat about the state facility. Or I could speak. I could destroy my own family to save myself. I could sever the bloodline. I looked past the detective. I looked at Alina. She was standing behind the counter still, her hands clasped tightly in front of her chest. She was shaking, the adrenaline hitting her now. But she was looking at me. She nodded. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. Strength. I looked at Tyler. He had stopped screaming for a second to catch his breath. He looked up at me from the floor. His eyes locked with mine. I searched for my grandson in those eyes. I searched for the boy I had taught to fish. I searched for the toddler who used to cry when he scraped his knee. I found nothing. I saw only a predator who was angry that the trap hadn't snapped shut on the rabbit. There was no love. There was no remorse. There was only the cold, hard calculation of a sociopath who realized his asset was depreciating. I am not unfit, I said. My voice was raspy, unused to authority after months of submission, but it cleared as I spoke. I sat up straighter in the chair, shedding the shock blanket like a cocoon. Tyler screamed, thrashing against the officer's grip. Check his pockets, he has dementia medication. Check his pockets, I said. I pointed a shaking finger at my grandson. Detective Miller frowned. Check his jacket pocket, I said, my voice gaining volume, gaining the timbre of the engineer who used to command construction sites. The inside left one. Tyler yelled, but there was a new note in his voice, fear. I don't have anything. Miller stood up.
He walked over to Tyler. He signaled the officer holding him down. They rolled Tyler onto his side. Miller reached into the inside pocket of the expensive suit jacket, the jacket bought with my pension check. He pulled out a small black leather notebook. Tyler froze. He blinked, staring at the object in Miller's hand. He looked confused. He thought it was my bank passbook. He had grabbed it from the kitchen counter this morning, along with my ID, shoving it into his pocket, assuming it was just another financial document he needed to control. Miller asked, holding it up. It's his, Tyler stammered. It's his diary or something. I was keeping it safe for him. Open it, I said. Miller opened the notebook. He flipped to the first page. It wasn't nonsense. It was a ledger. I kept a record, I explained, looking at the ceiling tiles, counting them to keep my voice steady. I am an engineer detective. We document structural failures. Miller read the first entry aloud. June 12th. Withdrawn, $500. Reason given, groceries. Actual groceries purchased, $50. The silence in the bank lobby deepened. The police officers stopped moving. The paramedics stopped adjusting their equipment. Miller flipped the page. He read the next one. July 4th. Transfer, $2,000 via Zelle. Note, Tyler twisted my left wrist until the bone popped when I refused to unlock the phone. Tyler's face went white. He stared at the notebook. He hadn't opened it. He had just taken it, assuming it was part of his loot, assuming I was too senile to keep a log. August 15th. Miller read, his voice hardening, losing the professional detachment. Sold my wife's wedding ring. Value, priceless. Sold for $800 at a pawn shop on 5th. Note, he told me he lost it. I found the pawn ticket in his jeans while doing his laundry. Miller looked down at Tyler. The pity that had been in his eyes when he looked at me was gone. Now, looking at the young man in the suit, there was only the cold, hard disgust of a lawman facing a parasite. What do you mean? Miller asked Tyler. He's making it up, Tyler shouted.
but it was weak. He's paranoid. I have the hospital records for the wrist, I said calmly. Miller flipped the page. There it was. Miller closed the notebook. He handed it to the officer beside him. Bag this. He reached down and grabbed Tyler by the arm, hauling him up to his knees. Tyler Vance, Miller said, his voice ringing through the shattered lobby.
Tyler cried, tears streaming down his face now, tears of a bully who realizes the playground is closed. I didn't steal the money. We didn't leave with it.
No, Miller said. It's elder abuse, extortion, grand larceny, and based on the threats detailed in this ledger. Tyler stopped screaming. The reality hit him like a physical blow. The nursing home threat, the power he held, the kingdom he had built on my back, it all evaporated in seconds. He looked at me. He really looked at me, for the first time in years. He didn't see the resource. He didn't see the victim. He saw the man who had built bridges. He saw the grandfather who had once loved him enough to give him everything, and the man who respected himself enough to take it back. "Grandpa, please," he whimpered. His voice cracked. He looked like a child again, small and scared. "I'm sorry. I messed up. I'll pay it back. I'll fix it." I looked at him. I felt a pang of sorrow in my chest, a deep, aching grief for the boy he could have been. But I also felt the throb of the bruise on my arm. I remembered the nights I lay awake, terrified he would come into my room. "You can't pay back time, Tyler," I said softly. He wailed as they hauled him up. "Family doesn't break your bones," I said. The officers dragged him toward the door. He struggled, his shoes squeaking on the polished floor, leaving scuff marks on the marble. He was dragged out the shattered glass doors, past the crowd of spectators who were filming with their phones, past the ambulance, and into the back of a squad car. The lobby fell silent. The hum of the server room was the only sound. I sat there, wrapped in the orange blanket, feeling a strange emptiness. The threat was gone, the weight was lifted, but the space it left behind was cold. Elena walked around the counter. She ignored the yellow police tape. She ignored the manager who tried to stop her. She walked right up to my chair. She knelt down. She took my hand, the one that wasn't bruised, in hers. Her hands were warm. "I was so scared I was wrong," she whispered. Her eyes were wet. I squeezed her hand. "I thought if I pressed the button and you were really just buying a boat, I'd lose my job." She laughed, a tear slipping down her cheek. "But I saw your eyes, William. You saved my life, Elena," I told her. "He would have killed me. Maybe not today, but soon." "No, William," she said, shaking her head. "You saved yourself. You wrote the book." You gave the signal. I looked at the shattered doors where my grandson had vanished. I looked at the sunlight streaming in through the broken glass, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. "Thank you," I whispered. 6 weeks later. The air in the new lobby smelled of lavender and fresh coffee. It was a different bank branch, closer to the city center. I walked in. I was using a cane now. My hip still bothered me on rainy days, but I was walking under my own power. I wore a new coat. I had shaved. I approached the desk. "Mr. Elena stood up from her new desk. She had been promoted. Assistant manager. "Hello, Elena," I smiled. "It's so good to see you," she said, coming around the desk to hug me. "You look—" "I feel lighter," I admitted. I sat down in the chair opposite her. I placed a folder on the desk. "I sold the house," I said. Elena's eyes widened. "It was too big," I said. "Too many ghosts. And Tyler, well, scars on my arm and a hole in my heart where my grandson used to be. But I wasn't lonely. I was safe. I was free. I watched the second hand take forward. It was time to live.